can't hear me? I'm not sick, but I am losing my voice, so if I'm suddenly getting lower and lower, I apologize. My name is Laura Carter, and I work at the Mersey Tobeatic Research Institute on all manner of forest-related projects there. But my primary focus has been on developing. Sorry, has been on developing and coordinating our pilot program called Woodlands for Wildlife. So I've already got a chance to chat with a few of our landowners that are already participating in the program today. So that's been really lovely to reconnect with everyone. And I'm so happy to get to share what we've been doing with all of you. The program itself is just coming into its first active year of landowner engagement and species at risk monitoring. And it's been really exciting to witness the really positive response that we've gotten so far. So let's run you through a bit of background about the program and MTRI, and followed by some details about it, and then open up for questions at the end if you have any. And the clicker's working. So first up, for those that aren't already familiar with us, the Mersey Tobeatic Research Institute or MTRI, is a nonprofit cooperative based in Kent, Queens County. So if you head a little further down Highway 8, we're like 5 or 10 minutes away from here. Can't miss us unless the shrubs are grown up around our sign, they sometimes are. Our mandate is to promote and conserve and sustain biodiversity in Gascoigne or Southwest Nova Scotia and beyond. And so we're involved in quite a lot of workshops and landowner engagement, lots of species at risk research, old growth forests, wetlands, all that sort of stuff. So, Woodlands for Wildlife is a 3-year pilot program in which we're currently entering year 2 that MTRI is piloting, and we are primarily giving small financial incentives to landowners and recognition to encourage the protection of significant species at risk habitat on private woodlands in southwest Nova Scotia. The program currently applies to a total of 20 at-risk birds, turtles, lichens, and tree species. And we work with woodland owners to establish effective buffers around significant species at risk habitat, in addition to a series of species-specific beneficial management practices. And you can see here that this is the full list of species that we include in the program. So a bit of background. A few years ago, MTRI conducted a series of landowner interviews in southwest Nova Scotia just to gauge landowners' general thoughts about woodland management and considerations for elements like biodiversity and species at risk conservation. And from those interviews, a resounding theme became really apparent, and that is that many landowners weren't really aware of the presence of species at risk on their property or what habitat features they should be looking for. And many were wary of what managing forest species at risk would mean for their ability to continue to support their livelihoods and goals, and essentially not be penalized for owning a property that contains species at risk. The majority of landowners also expressed a strong belief in the importance of biodiversity and species at risk conservation, but just weren't really sure what they should be doing to support them or what the financial implications would be. So many of you may already know this, but Southwest Nova Scotia has been designated as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve and priority place due to its value for biodiversity and in supporting over 75% of our species at risk. And it's small private woodlands that make up a huge proportion of this forested land in Southwest Nova Scotia that many of these species at risk are found in. And this in turn makes the stewards of these private woodlands a really critical and powerful force in our species at risk conservation strategies. So speaking of those strategies, incentive programs themselves have been really quite successful in other industries, such as agriculture and other parts of the world. However, there's really no initiative that we're aware of that was incentivizing species at risk conservation in forested landscapes in the province. So, Woodlands for Wildlife was developed to essentially fill this gap, in which we work with landowners with known species at risk on their properties to implement and maintain significant habitat buffers, as well as additional species-specific management practices. And this includes things like limiting silviculture and road maintenance during critical breeding seasons. So critical breeding seasons vary depending on the species suite. So for birds, that critical season is from April 15th to August 15th. And for turtles, that includes May 15th to July 15th, as well as September 1st to October 15th. And these critical seasons were established to best encapsulate the time of year in which these species are establishing territory or nesting, or when fledglings or hatchlings are most likely to be on the land base. So a bit about the buffers. Wetlands and watercourses in particular represent extremely important habitat for many of the species that the program covers, and are therefore commonly the features that we're buffering. For more upland species, buffers are also applied to confirmed habitat and nesting sites. The program then rewards landowners for their conservation efforts through an annual incentive payment that's tied directly to the total operable forested area included in these buffers. Over an 80-year forest rotation, So if the Woodlands for Wildlife Program were to continue for 80 years, fingers crossed, landowners would theoretically have received the full value for their forested land while getting to keep their forested land and supporting species at risk that are inhabiting it. So it's a win-win all around, really. So that can all sound a bit abstract, so I like to give everyone a little example so that they can sort of visualize what I'm talking about. So for this property, you can see we have a forested wetland in blue, in which we have multiple known observations of at least one Canada warbler. In this situation, there are two different buffers that you can see. So the first one is our 50-meter core buffer, in which no silviculture or road building activity will be permitted at any time. And then we have a larger 100-meter critical season buffer, which is where no silviculture or road maintenance will be permitted during that critical season, which again, for birds, is April 15th to August 15th. And landowners are only paid for the portion of the buffer that actually falls within the property boundary. So for example, on this slide, only 16 acres actually fall within that 100-meter buffer in yellow. So that came out to about $320 a year. So we are a pilot currently, so we do prioritize properties for participation, mostly done through desktop analysis using primarily a species at risk database and various wetland and critical habitat mapping. Species with higher federal and provincial at-risk status are given higher priority for the program, as well as those with higher numbers of species at risk or more than one type of species at risk. Many small private woodlands in Nova Scotia have that really long, narrow shape that you saw in our example. So we also prioritize properties that are adjacent to one another that would better encapsulate a full wetland to better protect that critical habitat. As well as newer observations in general will be weighed a little more heavily for consideration. And above all, woodlands must be found to support at least one species at risk to qualify for the program. And MTRI conducts all of those preliminary species and habitat surveys ourselves. We also periodically request access to properties to conduct ongoing species monitoring and compliance checks. And so we always welcome landowners to accompany us on these property surveys, both to show us around, because a lot of the time, you guys have cut much nicer trails than I will ever find, as well as it gives us a chance to show you the significant habitat features. And sometimes if we're lucky, we even get to actually see the species at risk firsthand with the landowner. I don't know if any of you have done much bird surveys, but bird mornings for surveys can be a bit of a tough sell for some landowners. We're usually on site for 6 or 7 a.m. to hear the morning chorus, usually in a wetland, usually a lot of bugs. But for those that are willing, it is a really lovely morning in the woods, and we usually do get to see some beautiful species along the way. Also, many private woodlands in southwest Nova Scotia haven't really been assessed for species at risk very fairly. We do discover more than we went in for a lot of the time, so that can be exciting as well, to discover something that we didn't even know was there. So we then provide woodland owners with a customized implementation plan, which is composed of the property map that you saw in the example with the applicable buffers, as well as a document that outlines the specific beneficial management practices required for each species. That one's really blurry, sorry guys. So in this example is one of our program sheets, and this is for a property that has a Canada warbler on it. You can see in that top section of boxes that we have that 50-meter and 100-meter core buffer and critical season buffer laid out for you, and all of the applicable management practices that are permitted. Again, that 100-meter buffer is what that $20 per acre estimate is used for our calculation. Most of the things on this sheet are to do with maintaining the habitat that already exists. We also ask things of landowners, like if someone's doing work on your property, just let them know that the species is there and like where those buffers lie. Also to inform us if you see the species outside of where those buffers are sitting, things like that. Also for like Canada warblers, for example, a lot of it's to do with like minimizing ground disturbance, to like protect that thick shrubby understory that they like, and by retaining stumps and snags, and just generally maintaining the integrity of the wetland as a whole. Additionally, all participating landowners are asked to sign a conservation agreement with MTRI, which is an entirely voluntary agreement that just outlines the responsibilities of both MTRI and the landowner to each other. So we essentially enter into a form of partnership where we really hope that landowners get to view MTRI as a resource to help them best balance their goals for their property with the continued protection of the species at risk that's found there. And the key elements in these agreements is, just to make note of, is the annual incentive payments themselves. So there's a clear breakdown of the amount that the landowners can expect to receive each year. Species monitoring and compliance checks. So it states that these will be conducted with notice. And again, landowners are always encouraged to come with us if they would like to. And MTRI staff always carry their own liability insurance in case there's an injury or anything like that when they're on the property. Compliance is a big one, so the program itself will never cost you money directly. So if it is determined at some point that you have not met or adhered to the agreement, you simply forfeit your future incentive payment. So that's it. You will never be trying to claw back funds or take anyone to court. You just simply don't get that next incentive payment. And the last one is the ability to opt out. So as it is a pilot program, and we do really hope to retain the participants for the full term, it is explicitly stated in the agreements that we are able to opt out at any time with 60 days notice. So you're never locked in fully should your situation change. And we acknowledge that these payments are fairly modest a lot of the time. No one's going to be getting rich off of this program. But the idea is really to recognize those landowners that are willing to go above and beyond to protect these species at risk. And that's about it, I think, with brochures and things about the program with contact information. So yeah, feel free to flag me down afterward.